if I press that button, I think that means we start record. I think that means the magic is happening. Go and say a thing, Alex.
A thing?
That'll do.
I want to say a thing.
Yeah, that's fine. A thing will do nicely. Yeah. Happy Christmas. No, actually, do I care about Christmas? Yeah, happy Christmas, whatever. Yuletide greetings, all one and everyone, and
Joyeux Noel.
Joy Noel. It's as you know, it is currently everyone's just had Christmas. Wait a minute, I have no idea when's this going out. This is probably going out like December the 30th. It's going out on the December the 30th. So everyone's had Christmas. Everyone's
almost Happy New Year.
Everyone's fat. What a year it's been. I'll tell you what, let's do this. Oh, damn, let's not do that. Let's do this. Here he is. It's worked. The technology's working. Nope. Hooray! It's no longer a blank screen. Hello, everyone. We have tea. Oh, well, I have tea. I don't know. Alex, do you have tea? You don't have tea? Right. Have a mince pie? There's a mince pie, only because I think mince pie should be served all year round. And also, obviously feeling very festive with. There we are. What's that around your neck, Alex, and why?
This is a Christmas bow tie.
Very good.
But as you can see, I can't tie it.
That's great. That's good.
So, because my wife is away for work, and
you don't get Jenny to. You don't get her to tie your bow ties, do you?
Well, I mean, I wear them approximately once per 1.5 years or something, and I can't do it. I can tie a normal tie, but I never have to wear one because I'm a snow nerd and we don't wear ties.
It's true. Yeah, that's it. Everyone, welcome to Rail Natter. It's Christmas-ish time. It's the season for it's holiday season basically, and so we're doing a pre-record because it's actually October.
I wonder if everybody's actually with their families or if they're on their own in lockdown.
People are going to be watching this in mid-January, having not noticed that I put one out, so it's fine. But I thought I'd do at least one during the holiday season, and if I get a couple of other pre-records in, great. But we'll see. Anyway, right. Oh my God, it's 7:09 according to this because we started 5 minutes late. We're weirdly recording this at a normal at Rail Natter time. Anyway, this has been going on for 2 minutes and 33 seconds. So with minor technical glitches at the start, it's fine. Tell you what, let's press this. That is now working. Good. Right. I'm gonna have to clip things out of this. Anyway, right. Okay. So there we go. Oh, I'm there. Yeah, right. So, Alex, we've got Alex Priestley with us. Hooray! To talk about... so last time we had you on, Alex, you were talking about weather versus railways. Now you're going to be more specific. You're going to talk about snow versus railways. Maybe it's going to be the second in a series, although we've somewhat run out of weather things. I don't know where you go from weather and then snow. What's the next thing within your expertise that you can do next? I don't know.
We could be very specific about fog or something if you like.
Yeah, like a particular type of snow. That's
particular types of snow, of which there are
neve
many.
Versus railways.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Yeah. And to be honest, I don't think we have any. I don't think there's any news, which means that basically we're going to crack on and start the episode. Hooray! The lovely Intercity 225. Alex, I don't know if you got the sound for that, but what I've done is add jingle bells to Ivor the Engine. I'm pretty,
brilliant.
It's good stuff. And just as we, to start, here's a nice picture of, here's a really nice picture with you kind of falling over. What's
This is me showing my snow expertise. So I love snow, obviously, but I'm not a very good skier, which is slightly embarrassing when I work with French and Swiss snow colleagues who are born on skis and can ski before they can walk, but I manage.
Yeah, it's a bit mean of me to get you to put this picture in because you are actually a capable. You can move along the ground,
vaguely downhill,
possibly downhill with skis upon you.
Stood up.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, that's okay. So this is a hint as to why on earth you are here as an expert, inverted commas, to talk about snow.
Huh.
What? So tell us, Alex, firstly, what the hell are you doing in this picture?
Well,
but also,
so
why are you talking to us about snow?
well, so the reason I'm an inverted commas expert on snow is because I'm doing a PhD on snow at the moment, and I'm studying making a new technique for measuring how liquid water moves through snow, and this is important because liquid water in snow is a big factor in avalanche risk, and it also affects dramatically how quickly or slowly the snow melts during the spring, which is very important in alpine countries, particularly where they're interested in hydroelectricity. But it's also very important if it melts very quickly because it might cause serious flooding, which has occasionally happened in the UK, although it's not an awfully common thing in the UK to have snowmelt flooding, but elsewhere it can be really serious. So I'm working on ways to measure the liquid water in the snow and model it with an aim of improving our forecasts of snowmelt runoff for avalanche risk and flood risk. Yeah.
And is this one of your jerry-rigged kind of sensors in the background there? Oh, not in the background, just behind you.
That's just a stick with markings on it to measure the depth of the snow. It's very high tech. So this is some field work I did a couple of years ago, and it's actually not in the Alps where I often spend time. It's actually in the Pentland Hills just outside Edinburgh.
Oh yeah.
During March 2018 when there was a lot of snow.
I remember you going out to do this actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't go to the Alps because everything was completely shut. So I went to the Pentlands and prodded some snow there and made some electrical measurements in the snow in the Pentlands. Yes, that was good. It was great fun.
So we'll come back to 2018 and snow, I presume.
We will, yes, because it was a good one.
It was a good one.
Well, not unless you don't like snow, but it was a good one if you do like snow. Yes, we'll come back to that. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that outline. It's a very interesting PhD. I think you're now at the point where you no longer find it interesting and you want it to be over. But
I want it to finish. Yeah.
If anyone is doing a PhD and doesn't experience that, then they're not doing the PhD properly.
They're not doing it properly.
So, yeah.
I don't think. Yeah.
So we're going to start. It feels like you're reasonably qualified to answer this question.
What is snow?
What is snow? Tell us Tell us what snow is, Alex, if you can, please. But this picture in the background
is what causes this in the background, and it's white. It's frozen water. It forms in clouds through various methods of accretion in the cloud that happen below freezing, obviously, because it's frozen, and then it falls out the sky, much in the same way that rain falls out of clouds and lands on the ground, and then stuff happens to it, depending on the temperature, the strength of the wind, the size of the bits of snow, henceforth known as snowflakes. So snow is basically, it's crystals of frozen water that fall as precipitation and then land on the Earth's surface and stick around for a bit. And it's this sticking around for a bit that causes the interest / problems that we're going to be discussing today, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Why is snow white? Why does it end up looking white like this?
Or is that like because it reflects all the visible spectrum back at you, and it's just white, I think. But then similarly, when you sort of, if you stick an ice axe in a snowdrift and look down the hole,
it does go blue.
It looks blue,
very vividly blue.
You get a different scattering of the different wavelengths of light. But I mean, I don't know much more about the colour of snow, apart from that it's usually white. Although it can be
yellow,
dirty, and it can be yellow, of course, and you must avoid the yellow snow. But it can be all sorts of other colours. So you can get Saharan dust can blow north from the Sahara and land on the Alps and colour the significant areas of the Alps sort of orangey red.
Oh wow!
And also a serious problem in the sort of climate feedbacks that's being studied more and more at the moment is black carbon. So soot basically landing on snow in a big way, say for example on Greenland, and making the snow darker.
And reducing the amount of energy that it reflects away.
And it'll melt quicker.
I see.
So the more carbon we put in, it'll melt. The more quickly it melts.
Right.
So that's. But anyway, snow normally people would assume it's white, and they'd be almost always right. Yeah.
This is a pic. Is this a picture out of your book? What you've taken a picture with?
This is a picture out of my book that made an appearance last time.
What's his name again? J.R.R. Tolkien of Snow.
P.J.G.R.R.R. Ransom.
The boy.
There you go. That's a picture of my book.
Wait a minute, let me do it again, but I'm going to put it to big faces again. Show us the book.
Yeah, here's the book.
Snow, flood, and otherwise.
Snow, flood, and
flood, and tempest, railways, and natural disasters. Nice.
And there's an HST at Dawlish on the front. There you go. Lovely.
PJG Ransom. Nice work. Thank you.
And that's a picture from this book, and it's actually, unfortunately, it's an undated picture, but it does say where it is. So it's in the far north of Scotland, or the great north of Scotland line, near Buchan in Aberdeenshire, which is close to your homeland.
A former railway, but
there's no longer a railway there, but it looks like there's no longer a railway there.
Yeah, true. It's gone anyway, so no one's
so that's obviously been a pretty serious blizzard, and will require an awful lot of effort to get trains running on there again.
Yeah, crikey. So, okay, right. Next slide. Oh, okay. We've got one of the people should all be familiar with the Met Office sort of
Met Office graph. I mean, we had a few of them. Met Office map. Had a few of them last time, didn't we? So snow in the UK is extremely variable, both geographically and in time. So if you see on this map, you've got certain areas of the sort of high mountain, the Cairngorms, for example, where you get about at least 60 days a year with snow lying on average from the latest data. But then if you look further southwest, for example, like in Cornwall, for example, you basically get on average 0 or less than 5 days of lying snow. But that 30-year average masks a humongous amount of variation, both geographically and with time, like I said. So we'd get years like 2018, which was a recent example where we had really, really widespread cold, snowy weather. And then last winter, I don't think there was much snow in the UK, at least at low level at all. And that's pretty typical. And we have had periods of time, so years in a row, where there has been almost no snow anywhere at low levels. And then we get a year like 2018 where it comes in a big way and causes an awful lot of disruption.
So it's not.
It's very tricky to invest in protecting against it and mitigating against the damage that it causes, because you can spend an awful lot of money on snow plows and whatever else, and then not use them for 15 years, and then they've sat in a siding or wherever and rusted to bits, and then you have to get a new one. You might not use that for 15 years.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky decision.
So last time you're on, we talked about climate, the difference between climate and weather, and the fact that the 1981 to 2010 period is sort of is the 30-year period, if you like, that is considered to be a representation of climate. That's shifting by 10 years very soon, right?
Yeah, we'll soon get a new one.
Yeah, so do you expect this to go a lot paler, or do you think actually there might not be that much difference?
There will be less snow in the last 10 years have not been particularly snowy, although there have, like we've just been discussing, there have been some pretty snowy years in there.
True,
but I would be very surprised if the average over the last 30 years is more snowy than it was 10 years ago, if you see what I mean.
Yep.
So the trend is definitely to less snow overall, but that's not to say that there's not going to be any snow, and so it's still going to cause disruption for many, many years to come, but only every few years.
So that's averages, but in terms of the extremes, I know we're dwelling on this one because it's quite interesting actually. So in terms of the extremes, last time we talked about extremes of weather. We've seen all too upsettingly what the consequences of extreme weather can be since we had our conversation. In fact, in terms of snow, we may not be seeing the number of average days, but are we? Do you know if we're seeing a trend towards more extremes of snowfall? So shorter, less overall days of cover, but more extremes that last for shorter periods. Do you know what those trends? I don't know how those trends are even captured, to be honest.
I don't know actually. That's an interesting question, and I think that's an area where more research would have to be done. But I mean, we're definitely seeing more extremes of precipitation. Days where we're getting seriously disruptive amounts of precipitation, and if the temperature is low when that occurs, then we might get extreme amounts of snow. But then, if the average temperature is warmer overall, then it would you would expect to see fewer. Yeah, that
okay.
snow lasting less.
So it's more like,
less
so we'll
time,
just be getting high, spikes of rainfall that might be really cold, but it's still rainfall rather than being snow, because average temperatures are increasing overall. Yeah, okay. Right, okay. So that's snow, but why does the railway give us stuff about snow? Well, I suppose this is both of us to answer this one. Maybe it's even more. Well, you gave pictures. Here's a picture. So, as from a track perspective, actually, snow's all right most of the time. But when it's kind of light, soft stuff, the railway can kind of, or trains sort of bash it and it's fine, and they whiz through snow and it's fine. However, it is quite hard and heavy, and if you get a sufficient lump of it in the way of a train, it can cause the train. You can bop your train off the track, which is not recommended. This is a picture of somewhere, because I googled it, and this is a Network Rail Media Centre image. So they don't mind me using it, but I can't remember where it is. Somewhere quite nice. It looks very pleasant. Nice.
There are some icicles dangling off that bridge, which might be more of an issue.
I was going to say those are scarier because they're very much likely to be infringing gauge.
They're heavy
and are heavy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And can break windows when a train hits them. So actually, going through tunnels. There's a reason why tunnels get closed is from icicles hanging down at sort of halfway, usually at the ends or at shafts where there's a bit more where the melt comes down. Anyway, so it can be problematic for the railway when it in sufficient sort of scale. For example, this picture that you sent through, we were rationing a few pixels. Apologies, everyone, but this is not good. Where is this, Alex? Where's this picture?
So that's on the West Coast Main Line, north of Carlisle in southern Scotland. So somewhere sort of round Beattock sort of area.
Okay, yeah.
In March 2018, after one of the most serious blizzards that we've had in recent decades, really, it was quite exceptional. I don't know if anyone remembers the Beast from the East, but it was pretty spectacular. And it was very cold, and the snow was very dry, and it was very windy, so it was blowing around like nobody's business. And somewhere under there were two railway lines.
This is not a safe. This is no longer a safe. You cannot run a passenger or a freight train through here. You need something that's very heavy and very spiky at the front, because frankly, this is not. You'd struggle to get. Well, we'll talk about this a bit more later, but this is a problem. You cannot run a railway when there's this much snow on it. And it's also, I'm glad you picked up one with OLE in it, because snow can be a real problem for OLE as well, particularly if it is being blown in, if the conditions are right for it to be blown around and form rime ice around the OLE cables, can result in them sagging quite a lot, which in turn can result in some serious problems in terms of reduced electrical clearance and potentially getting flashovers to your train or structures, all sorts of nasties. So even if the tracks are actually not too badly buried, significant snowfall and the right snow conditions can actually cause real problems for OLE. Generally, what the Germans generally do is they get their gauge master Hornby control thing, and they just wiggle the dial a bit to get some juice to flow through the OLE to melt all the snow off. But and indeed, that is one of the things that we do.
That sounds good.
Not necessarily the perfect catch-all. So the railways, the wrong sort of snow, which we'll maybe touch on. But snow can be a challenge for all sorts of bits of infrastructure. Also snow collecting in signals and things can be an issue as well. There are lots of issues that snow can be problematic with. This is another photo that is nuts. I recognise this bit of railway though. This is the North Berwick branch, right?
It is, yeah. So that's just off the East Coast Main Line in East Lothian in southern Scotland. And it's just a short little branch line that goes to North Berwick. And in that same blizzard from the previous photo in March 2018, the wind was so strong and there was sufficient amounts of snow just in this short cutting that great big snow drifts called cornices built up over the railway line, and then were threatening to collapse onto the railway line. So they had to close the line for, I think, a week or something before they worked out how to remove these overhanging ledges of snow, which were threatening to collapse onto the track. And of course, when they formed, those snow drifts would have been all lovely and fluffy and powdery and very pretty and nice. But after they've been sat there for a week at temperatures maybe occasionally going above freezing and then going back down below freezing, the snow is one of the reasons why snow is so difficult, is it changes a lot when it's on the ground. So it'll have melted and then refrozen again, and then melted a bit more and refrozen, and it transforms from being a light fluffy lovely
talcum powder
pretty
or like icing
talcum
sugar.
powder, beautiful substance, to being horrible, rock solid, basically ice, and it's very dense and very heavy. And if that fell on a train, it wouldn't be great.
Yeah,
And it would also, I think it was also threatening to sort of bring lots of rocks with it as well. So really not a great situation. So that was quite an unusual example of snow causing trouble. And I think fortunately that sort of thing doesn't happen very often.
For that to happen in East Lothian, which is notoriously seaworthy, it's next to the sea and quite kind of generally pleasant,
quite temperate
climate.
sort of place. Generally,
it's unusual for that to be a particular issue there, but the image was. I mean, we went for a hill trip, I think, didn't we? Or I came up and met you kind of a couple of weeks after this, and there were still like melting cornices on verges of the main roads around like Fife.
The motorway cuttings just north of Edinburgh. I remember we drove up, didn't we? And there were massive banks of snow, like not dissimilar to this, but on the motorway. Several weeks later, it was
bonkers. And it's just, as you say, just a huge grotty lump of like half.
At that stage, it didn't look very pretty. It wasn't picture postcard at that stage. It was dirty, brown, mucky, icy slush. Well, not slush, but
solid. It's solid enough to knock a wheel off to derail the front wheel set of a train. Particularly if it's a multiple unit. So not great. Not great. So that's a challenge. So, oh gosh, okay. So those are things.
And this. So now we just discussed a very rare occurrence, was cornices closing a line in East Lothian. This I think is possibly even more rare. I think Network Rail are probably hoping it's more rare, or rarer rather. There was some infrastructure damage. You can tell us about this,
there was a colossal avalanche near Bridge of Orkney, right? I remember because it stopped us from doing some hills for a while. What year was this actually?
This was March 2010.
Of course it was. It was 2009, 2010.
So for this to occur to such dramatic effect, we needed a combination of factors, and we needed obviously huge amounts of snow. That goes without saying, but it needed to be getting blown by the wind onto steep enough slopes to then form an avalanche, and then there needed to be a railway at the bottom of these slopes. And all those criteria were met in early to mid March 2010, where there was a long period of heavy snowfall with winds that were blowing in the right direction.
So it has to stratify for avalanche. Is that part of it?
Yeah.
Like, is it an element of like you have like a wind slab, or I suppose there are lots of different ways that it can develop. But
this avalanche was probably actually a wet snow avalanche. So that's what happens when. So it goes back to what I'm sort of studying is the snow actually melts a bit, and liquid water starts to lubricate the bottom of the snowpack, and the interface of it, either the interface of it with lower layers of snow or the ground, and also the melting water makes the snow a lot denser, and then at some point the weight of the snow overcomes the frictional strength of what's holding it up on the slope, and then that happens.
And it made a right old mess because it wiped out the track, and it smashed a bit of fence, which I believe is still in the river actually to this day.
We looked at it a few years later, and there were still bits of retaining wall and fence,
bits of like early key clamp fence just half buried in the river at the bottom of the river.
I mean, and obviously remember that although that looks just like mostly snow in this picture, that snow will have entrained an awful lot of other stuff. So there were lots of trees that went down with it, and also boulders and soil and everything else. So
plus plus presumably if it's wetter snow, then the density is approaching quite actually, the mass per meter cubed is starting to get towards what water is anyway, right? It's actually a pretty heavy mass really anyway.
Heavy, probably 600 or 700 kilograms per meter cubed,
which you don't want to argue with.
No, you don't want to argue with that.
So that's so snow, it can cause some headaches.
Problematic.
This is really rare, obviously, but again, it's something that the railway has to think about. So that kind of begs the next question, which is what in the heck does the railway do about it? Again, this is like this is you as a snow nerd, but also a railway nerd a little bit to tell us some of these things. And the people who are in the chat, because this will go out as a premiere, so there'll be people in the chat who will be discussing this at great length. We're just here to facilitate your discussions, everyone. Hello, people in the chat. But there are some fun pictures here, and we'll be able to tell you very little in any meaningful detail about most of these things, which is fine because they entertain us. If not.
We've done these in order of
like
of
horsepower. I don't know. Yeah,
and horsepower and how likely the railway is to use them, and so this is at the lower end of the likelihood scale, but at the upper end of the hilarity scale. So basically, there have been a few particularly notably cold and snowy winters in the UK over the last 100 years, for example. And one of the most snowiest winters was 1947, and it crippled the country for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. It was, post-war, everything was already a bit broken and knackered, and then this was really quite bad for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the railways got desperate. So this is what they tried in various places across the railway network in the north of England in early 1947. They basically the RAF had some jet engines lying around spare.
As you do.
So they bolted them onto the back of some wagons, shunted them up to these snowdrifts, and tried to blast the snowdrifts away because they were spending so much time and so much manpower trying to dig them up that they thought, well, why don't we use a jet engine?
This was
mixed success.
Yeah, mixed success. To quote Pokemon Red, it was not effective.
Well, I think I don't know if this is a photograph of it actually doing it, but I think at one point the snow was so dense and sort of solidly stuck down onto the in amongst all the track and stuff that they actually managed to rip some track up with the snow. And then also I think they were worried about causing serious injury with flying lumps of ice and ballast, as you would be. Although obviously health and safety wasn't particularly at the forefront of their minds then, because they'd mounted a jet engine on a truck. So it's
like a trilby isn't much protection against a piece of ballast being blasted at 350 miles an hour from a Rolls-Royce Spey or whatever it is they've mounted over this thing.
But it was slightly unfortunate that they only sort of got round to doing this when the snow had been on the ground for weeks and weeks and was rock hard. Because if they had tried it on some loose powdery stuff, it would no doubt have been extremely effective and also really cool to watch. But no, it didn't work out very well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like the mounting a railgun to the front of a train to solve level crossing incursions approach to snowfall. But I mean, funnily enough, it hasn't entirely taken off, but it's not like it's not an approach that isn't broadly emulated by other technologies. For example,
so this is a snowblower, and I didn't have any pictures of these. Couldn't find any good pictures of them in action, but basically they're like a massive food processor on the front of a train that churns the snow up with these massive spinning blade things and then sprays it out of the top and sprays it, in theory, into somewhere where you don't mind the snow going, like a field next to the railway line or something. And after some seriously snowy winters, I think in the late 70s and early 80s, British Rail finally got around to buying one of these, or buying a few of them, and they even were so worried about serious winters that they bought one and based it in London.
Yeah,
because that's
toothpaste delivery.
Network Southeast in the late 80s. They have subsequently moved them to Scotland, where they are far more likely to be used. But so these are cool. I think these were used in 2018 as well. They were sort of buzzing around the country, clearing.
These ones with a German name.
Biohack.
That's it.
Yeah. No, that's I learned that from my book. Yeah,
it's in your book. Okay.
It's in my book. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, this is from Her Majesty's Secret Service is what I always think of these, because there's skier ending up in one of them who's chasing James Bond. But that wasn't mounted to the front of a Class 5 shunter or whatever. It's whatever this thing is. I don't know. People are going to correct me very angrily about that.
I'm sure they are.
Whatever it's mounted to, is the idea that it's in toothpaste livery and kind of parked in Croydon or wherever it happens to be is humorous.
I mean, to be fair, there is some snow.
Yeah, it's true. There is snow there.
I mean, it does snow in Croydon.
It's true.
It's not. It's true. There are less snowy places in the UK.
So step down from things that rotate and blow down to a slightly more mechanical approach, which is drive at it.
This is just a snowplow, an independent snowplow. So it's basically just a sort of wagon thing with a big blade on the front that you push along with a locomotive into snowdrifts, and then it chops them up and scoops them out of the way. And these sort of tend to go around in pairs because you have one on the front facing forwards and one on the back facing backwards. Because what tends to happen when these are being used is they go forwards and blast all the snow out of the way, and then they can't go back the way they've come. It blows back in and stuff. So they usually have one on both ends.
It also means they don't need to worry about turning around at the wherever
true.
they.
Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah.
For operational reasons. And this is probably the big one that people are familiar with. Most of these, I think, if not all of them, are formed of former steam tenders. Actually,
are they?
Little nugget for you. I'm sure there's probably entirely new build one or two out there, but I'm pretty sure most of the big ones like this are former tenders. And there's the half size ones as well, aren't there? So there's the big full height ones, and then there's the half size ones. They're see them around as well.
Yeah, you sometimes see them sort of just parked up in various places, just sort of waiting for it to snow.
Yeah,
that's quite nice. They're cool. And there was some pretty good videos on Twitter in 2018 that Network Rail put up of these scooting about, particularly around East Anglia as well, because a lot of the East Lothian and East Anglia, a lot of these eastern counties got really serious snowdrifts in that 2018 snowy period. So they were scooting around, blasting them out of the way, and there was pretty cool videos of that going on. So yeah.
I've missed a trick getting some of Sean Lee's sort of the Network Rail Air Operations team had some really good aerial helicopter shots of railways. There's a good one of Carstairs Junction coated in snow, and there's the really good one of the Far North Line just utterly caked. I should have pulled some of those up. Anyway, people can Google them. I'll maybe do a few in a Twitter thread over Christmas because now I've done it already. I've done that thread already. Brilliant. What a good idea that was.
Because it is Christmas, isn't it, Gareth?
Yeah, it's past Christmas. It's the 30th of December, I think. I should probably check that. Anyway, that's fine. So those go around. That's fine. But then we're stepping down in terms of horsepower. A
few fewer horses here.
Fewer horses.
There is a Class 37. That's got quite a few horses.
That's true.
So on the front of the locomotive, there are actually some very small snowplows, which they're pretty handy for the vast majority of instances. The snow doesn't get deep enough to cause much more trouble than would be dealt with they're about sort of 50 centimeters high or something.
And they're on pretty much all of the multiple units that operate north of the Watford Gap, or certainly like the northern ones that go over Settle Carlisle, and all the Scottish units have a little snowplow. All
the Scottish ones have them,
yeah.
And then locomotives have them too. So they're pretty common. Yeah. So a locomotive, just a train in normal service, like a DMU, can clear the line of a shallow covering of soft snow with them, just as it's running as a normal train. It doesn't need to be a special snowplow train to do that.
And generally the railways can beat roads in terms of depth of snow. The railways can run in conditions where the roads cannot. So we are bemoaning railways and the challenges they face, but actually the railways is a pretty resilient system against like a decent amount of snow.
It is. Yeah, I mean, you can. Yeah, if you're trying to drive in this sort of snow and you didn't have a 4x4 with snow chains, you'd be going absolutely nowhere. And you can guarantee that the A82 over Ranachmoor was closed when this photo was taken.
Yeah.
And
I also see in this photo the Mark I shovel.
The Mark I shovel.
Which I suppose is an alternative means of snow removal if all others fail.
So, I mean, even nowadays, the basics are the simple is best, isn't it? So if you've got things like points to clear and little fiddly bits, you can't do that with snowplow. So you have to have a person with a shovel and get them digging.
Yeah. For the most part these days, we install. In fact, I don't know any S&C installations, switch and crossing installations we do now that don't have switch heating. Fitted to it. So for modern unit, but don't forget there's a huge volume of switches and crossings and point work in the UK that is, or on the GB network, that is knackered and old. So whilst all of our renewals will include switch heating, so that does, even in snow, that will leave a nice melted. So snow at this level would get through that. It would leave a nice melted patch, and the switches, the blades would be able to operate. But the old kit, the shovel is necessary, and sometimes they do get burners out, and generally, but for the most part, the shovel is the way of clearing old-fashioned S&C units. So the Network Rail mom will just be out with probably the driver of the Class 37, just both of them shoveling to let it operate, whether it's parked up at Crianlarich waiting to pop out, or wherever it happens to be at the time. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So those are all the we have to do things, but they're also passive things, right?
Yeah. So this is actually quite close by to where that previous photograph was taken. And this, I think, is it the only example in the UK? The snow shed.
So there are two things in screen here. Yeah. Actually, no, sorry. The snow. So the snow shed. Yeah, there's only one of those in the UK, and it's on Ranach Moor, right? Which is here. That's what we've got in shot.
So it was
with a steam loco, Alex. Nice work.
Yeah. So it was built there because that particular short section of cutting was notoriously bad for being filled in by snowdrifts. So instead of trying to dig it out every winter, the local engineers decided that they were going to build a little shed thing over it, and so instead of the snow filling the cutting, it covers the shed. So there you go, neat little
simple and effective
solution.
Yeah. And the other thing is snow fences, right? It is still, sorry, the snow shed is still there. Yeah.
Yes, but it's the only one, and it's I think it's successful in that very specific location, but then about where that train is, it probably gets filled in with snow.
Yeah.
So it's
mixed success.
Yes, snow fences are a lot more common. So if you go along the Settle Carlisle, for example, or many of the lines in the higher parts of Scotland, you see these, but they're often looking a bit worn out, aren't they? I mean, this one has got loads of holes in it, so I mean that does look
mildly haggard. Yeah,
it would do an awful lot.
I don't know to what extent they're. It's interesting. It'd be interesting to chat to the local route asset manager to understand whether they basically consider them to be not particularly functional anymore, obsolete, or whether they are good, but they just kind of, it's a faff to get out and repair them. I don't know. It's one of those things that by the time the railway, it'd be interesting. I reckon it's probably the fact that by the time the snow is blowing in, there's not the moment where it's working. It's just filled in anyway. So I'm interested into what level of success.
I think that they're actually not that effective. So I think they were installed once and they've just been left.
Yeah.
And they've obviously fallen into disrepair, and they never really worked very well when they were complete, and they're probably not.
And they're not going to have anyone sat out there measuring. This is the point. This is the amount of snow where it works. Great, because you don't notice. And then the point which it flips to it not working. At that point, you're preoccupied because you're digging the railway out anyway. So, I suppose they've never really been empirically tested.
No.
Yeah.
But there are quite a few of them around, so.
Well, yeah, this is it.
They obviously thought they would work at one point, but they don't seem to be.
There you go. There's some groggy master's thesis in that. I don't think it's enough for a PhD, but
probably not. No.
Martin Crapper, if you're watching, that's definitely going to be another one of your master's thesis projects, right? Anyway, right. So that's nice. Oh, okay, right, yeah. So we are 38 minutes in to this episode, ish, ignoring the edits from where I broke it. Two examples, yeah. So actually, I need to make a everything's broken kind of card, which I'll sit on top of where I've broken things, which will work wonderfully for the people who are listening to this in audio only format. Sorry to all of you who are listening to this in audio only format. Hopefully, we've done a reasonable job of explaining everything. So we're now going to move on to the next section, Alex, which is two examples of our hands-on experience of where this does not work out so well.
Catchy title.
Yes, very catchy title.
So, what, first of all, though, we should maybe big up the railways a little bit, because
go on.
Like we discussed that railways can operate when roads are completely scuppered with snow, and that actually, in fact, was the case on several of these trips that we've been on, wasn't it? Where we've been sat at the railway station, train delayed, admittedly, and wondering if it was ever going to get through. But the nearby main dual carriageway was long closed, and wasn't it? So
Yeah, for the most part, where you have extreme weather conditions, the railway, particularly when it comes to things like freight, is actually an incredibly useful and reliable way to move things around. Where, frankly, you look at the M8 as an example of a major trunk corridor between Scotland's two major cities, and when the snow gets particularly, it just gets knacked. The M9 up to Stirling gets knacked. The M6, the M62. When the weather's really bad, these roads are just obliterated, and these are the major the only connections between major cities.
And like we said, you don't need very much snow to stop an HGV going up a moderate gradient, do you?
Yeah, exactly. They're hopeless because
absolutely useless.
Yeah, so the railway actually is, let's big up the railway bit, because this is rail natter. The railway is actually pretty good in most snowy conditions. It's only these extremes, it's only where you get these extremes, the 2018 Beast from the East level of snow, where everything's shut down anyway, that kind of the railway comes unstuck a bit. However, if we just cast our minds there's two. Let's go back to, well, in fact, both of these examples are 2010, aren't they?
They are, and that was a particularly cold and snowy winter, wasn't it?
Particularly fruity year for excellent hill trips, actually.
Yeah, it was. And so we talked about the fact that climate change is going to make it warmer, but you're still going to get extremes. And 2010 was most certainly one of them, along with 2018. And it was exceptionally cold, very snowy, and it was fantastic.
It was brilliant. Yeah, it was really good. Was it these extremes that we get? Are they generally related to north? They're related often to things that are going on the other side of the planet, aren't they? When we get a particularly snowy, particularly cold winter, it's partly related to what's going on in the North Atlantic, and the flow of airflows across the North Atlantic, but it's also related to like El Nino going on in the Pacific, right? As well. So the conditions that you need to get very cold weather in the UK it's that those conditions need to be occurring over a sort of a continental scale. So for that sort of weather, you need it to be you need the whole atmospheric pattern over the northwest of Europe and the North Atlantic to be pointing the air coming to us from. It needs to be coming from Siberia or Greenland or the Arctic, and for that to happen, you need the weather elsewhere the large scale circulations elsewhere to be also oriented in the right way. So things like La Nina or El Nino have a pretty big effect on whether we get really cold or not cold winters, but they're just one of many effects, and their effects can be quite weak actually. There's an awful lot to be still understood about. They're called sort of teleconnections. Tele meaning far away, and connections obviously. And there's a lot of work going on to sort of understand how these affect our weather. So there's not just the El Nino. There's things like the Madden-Julian oscillation, which is an 8-phase oscillation, I think, in the Indian Ocean, and other things like that. That I don't know enough about them, and B, we need a lot longer to talk about them to But the atmosphere is a bit like a lava lamp, right? With bubbles of flow like going around and bouncing off each other, and sort of as a very simple analogy of what it kind of looks like in terms of hot and cold flow. You get all these bubbles, and they all influence each other, and they're dependent on all sorts of billions of variables.
And what you tend to get is the atmosphere tends to get sort of stuck in one pattern or another. So, for example, last February 2020, extremely wet, pretty mild, and the atmosphere was stuck in a sort of the weather was coming from the Atlantic for the UK, and that was why it was so wet and miserable. 2010, the whole winter almost was the opposite, and the weather was coming from the northeast, which is a cold part of Scandinavia and Siberia. So that was why it was so snowy, and it was like that for weeks and weeks on end. There were milder bits and bobs in between, so it wasn't permanently icy and snowy, but it was, you didn't have to wait long after one thaw for the next freeze to come.
Which is why, for example, we could stand in the middle of Loch Annalee and indeed make chocolate custard. I think. Have
you got a picture of the chocolate custard?
I think we made. Was that chocolate custard that we made in the middle of the loch?
Well, it was powdered normal custard that we then broke. Lidl chocolate into to try and melt, but it was so cold.
It didn't really work.
It didn't really work. So we kind of had semi-chocolate custard with lumps of chocolate in it. It was delightful.
Yeah, it was all right. Yeah, but it is a bit weird just trudging out onto a frozen
we were just
loch.
literally sat in the middle of a frozen loch, weren't we?
Yeah. This is me looking cheerful as you took a picture of me. I had one of
you
but
you do look very happy. Yeah.
Why do I look so like utterly uninterested in what's going on in that?
I mean, this was like like we say once in a decade sort of weather, and you look like you're in the sort of the shower cleaning aisle at Asda.
Yeah. There's this oh no, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to press this button and press this button and go. You can see quite a lot of absolutely murked trees here. Like, these trees are not doing all right.
Yeah.
I mean, they're probably half fine, but there's a lot of snow hanging off them.
There were a lot of broken branches. And
these are the sorts of scenes you expect in sort of, the sort of semi-Arctic parts of the, the sort of semi-Arctic forestry. But no, this was just the cairngorms.
Like a couple of miles outside Aviemore.
Yeah, walking distance from Aviemore, and everything was very, very snowy.
We could really have done with snowshoes. That would have made our day a lot easier.
There was I can confirm a reasonable volume of snow under our feet. Anyway, so so the weather conditions were good enough for us. We didn't even do a hill this day, did we? We just went up to have a laugh around Aviemore.
We couldn't because there was no way of getting to a hill because we'd have had to swim there. Swim in snow.
You'd have been up to literally up to our waists trying to get to snow, which impossible. Having done that through Noidar, I confirm it is no fun. So so we got back to Aviemore. So this was, when was this? This was early January.
January 2010. Yeah.
And lovely Aviemore station here.
There are some rails there somewhere, aren't there?
There are, yeah. So this Winton train's coming through here. They're slushing their way through the snow. But it kind of closed in a bit. I think this photo we took when we arrived, and then when we got, or maybe it was just when we got back to the station, we kind of then moved around and went for a cup of tea.
I think that was in the morning, and we had our tea and stuff, and then we came back to the station and.
It was in the dark, actually. So yeah. This would be in the morning. We got back in the dark, and we got. What happened? I was trying to remember the exact sequence of events. So we got a train that was supposed to have been going north, but had stopped in Aviemore and decided to just head south.
They turned it around, didn't they?
Yeah. And the reason for that was because of this. Because gravity threw a freight train into someone's back garden in Carb-rich, which. Yeah, there was one moment in I was trying to find the CCTV footage and I could not find it. There's some great CCTV footage. I think it's static images. There's one image where there's people on the platform, and the next minute where there's maybe one person who's like got their leg half up from the fact they're hightailing it, and the next minute there are a series of container, just like 4x8 containers just scattered on the platform with some empty flatbeds in amongst it, and then some trees in a different position further, like just down out of shot. Because the brakes froze on this Class 66, and it ended up getting thrown off the catch points, so that it didn't cause any havoc. I face plant into a Class 170 that was actually the one we were sat on. Yeah, so that was so we got the last train south on that day. We also got diverted through Fife because they'd been like, wasn't that the day when also there'd been?
I think that was a different time.
Oh no, that was the other. That was the next one, I think, actually. Yeah. So this was January, so we dodged a freight train finding its way. Everyone was fine in that incident, I have to say. But James, the engine, actually, I think possibly still operating. Actually, presumably it's not. I don't think it. These things are fairly robust. The only time one of these has really got sliced up was when it ended up, as we discussed last time, in a placky bag down the side above Loch Treeg. But the only reason they chopped that up was because it was totally inaccessible. That was fun, Alex. I enjoyed that. Not getting involved in one of these, that was good. This is the next one. Do you remember where this was?
So that's a bit further south than the previous photo, isn't it? So that's but not much further south. That's sort of just south of Drummochta Summit. So a notoriously bleak part on the rail and road network. We'd due to your ineptitude. We basically ended up getting a train a lot later than we planned because you forgot your ice axe.
I did.
Never mind. And then
we also got banned from Edinburgh Waverley.
We got banned from Waverley, but we just went to Haymarket.
Let's not talk too much about that. That's fine. Everything's fine. But we didn't get banned from Waverley.
Now it's fine.
Yeah, Everyone's pals.
So anyway, we got to our destination, Dalwhinnie, about 3 hours after we'd planned to, but that was our own fault. It wasn't the railway's fault. Everything else was, the trains were all running and stuff. Then we cycled a few miles down the bike path next to the A9, didn't we, to then go off up some hills.
With drifts building up underneath our wheels.
Yeah, there wasn't an awful lot of snow at that point. I mean, it was pretty snowy, but it was 10 centimeters, 15 centimeters, wasn't it? It was manageable.
Yeah, so it was like this. You can see the outline. So this photo, okay, the snow looks fun, but actually you can see all the outlines of grass. It's kind of, this was what it looked like when we arrived. This photo was taken as we crossed the railway to begin our walk, right?
Yeah.
Having cycled down, having deliberately launched ourselves into snowdrifts on our bicycles because it's quite entertaining.
It's very good.
I think we did less of that on the way there because we thought we were going to achieve something, whereas on the way back... Anyway, so then what happened when we crossed the railway, dumped our bikes next to the fence, which they then proceeded to get buried in snow. And what happened when we attempted to nab a couple of Munros that I think we've both subsequently gobbled up?
I have done them subsequently, yeah. No, it was incredible, wasn't it? So the snow at this level, so that's about 400 meters altitude, as you can see, was relatively manageable. But we went up a couple of 100 meters along the track up the hill, and it was incredible, wasn't it? The snow was...
We crossed
a
meter
to 2 meters deep.
And then basically we got to the middle of that snow sheet and realised that everything had whited out.
Yeah.
I'd put my dad's... So it was the first time I'd used goggles as a way of not being totally blind. You remember this?
And those are the ones that
Dad's old goggles from probably 1979 that I put on my face, and immediately the rubber perished and the foam just fell off. Just these things were just completely useless. So so that was hopeless. And basically we dug ourselves into a hole, gave up on the hill.
We dug a snow hole.
It's very important. Top tip of Munroing: know when to quit. That was one of those times.
Well, I think if we had been stupid enough to carry on, we might have been a statistic, but we certainly would have. It would have been genuinely really pretty stupid, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we'd have. I'm going with statistic at this point. We'd have been collected as an ice cube by a Sea King. If
they could have found us.
Yeah,
they might have only found us in May when it all thawed eventually.
Yeah, so thankfully we decided, to our better interests, to just bury ourselves in a little snow heap deliberately. So we dug ourselves a little snow shelter. And ate some lunch, and then came home. Yeah.
Then went back,
and then cycled back, and then at that point, that was fun. So everyone's obviously,
people
are wondering what the railway connection is at this point, other than us taking the train. Well, so we're in Dalwhinnie, excellent whiskey by the way, and I think things got a bit snowier again. I think we got the last train south before. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. So again, we got the last train south before this happened. And 2 Class 170s got froze just north of Slough, I think. It would have been Slough, wouldn't it? So the other side, north of... just basically the highest point. It's not the highest point, actually. Dromocta is the highest point, but basically the last high point before you drop down into Inverness is what I'm trying to gabble on. And so this picture nicely shows 2 snowed-in Class 170s, one in SPT livery as well, and one in the old First ScotRail livery for those who are following in audio only. That's an embellishment that I'm sure you had no interest in. In any case, snowy. They were locked in. Everyone had a horrible time of it, snowed into these trains, and we smugly got on the very last one on its way south.
We got the last train, didn't we?
We did, yeah. And I think it was on this trip that we then got diverted because there were also washouts on the Fife coast.
So it was snowing. It was snowing inland and high up, but it was pouring with rain on the coast, wasn't it? So there was all sorts of weather going on that day. It was pretty cool seeing at Dalwhinnie with the snowplow trains going through.
Yeah.
And we phoned the signalman, didn't we? You could. I don't know if you can still do that. Can you still do that?
I think you can at Dalwhinnie. Yeah. So most stations have the button, the big safety button. Yeah. But I think in Dalwhinnie there's still just an old phone.
It was literally just a telephone that had a direct line to the signalman who was at the end of the platform in a signal box. Yeah.
So we phoned the signaller. Yes, Alex, it's signaller, not signalman. Sorry, the signaller.
Okay, signaller, but in this instance was a man.
Yes. Who said that we were there? Yeah, there's a train coming. It'll stop for you, but I'd recommend getting on this one. I think it was basically what he said. Which we did with our bicycles and promptly returned to Edinburgh, and then subsequently found out that we were the last We were the most
That's
far north
train
people
south.
who got a train on the Highland Main Line that day successfully. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was nice. So the moral of that story is trains are still great and it's still fine. But we did get caught up in some of the 2010 railway shenanigans, Alex, which is fine. For the most
the
part.
A9 was a lot worse though. The A9 was closed for most of the day, whereas the railway line was open for most of the day.
Yes, it's true. It is true.
So there.
Yeah, again, hopefully the process has got tidied up a bit because it's actually really not very good to lock passengers into a snowbound train, and sending another one up to do for the same thing to happen is also not very clever. So processes were updated after this. I should hope. But broadly, 2010 was cracking. It's one of the good things about snow is it's quite good for doing hills. This was when was this? So this is when we did Benaglow and friends. Probably
February
the
2010.
snow day.
Yeah. So it's worth remembering that often when you get a very cold winter, it's cold because there's a lot of settled high pressure weather around. So in between all these periodic monster blizzards that we were having, there were long periods of just incredible weather, with really, really cold overnight frosts. So when we got off the train on this trip, I think it was -18 in Blair Athol, which is a bit nippy.
It was so cold.
Yeah. But then we got up above the valley inversion, so the cold air sinks. So the higher, in this instance, the higher up we went, the warmer it got. And we were on the tops in our t-shirts, weren't we?
Yeah. It was absolutely
basically sunbathing. It was
roasting,
unbelievable.
so nice.
Yeah.
Everything was covered in this rime that you can sort of see in this bad, low resolution image
Sparkly.
of mine.
Yeah.
It was sort of this sort of crystally stuff that you'd kick and it would make a sort of sound every time you'd put a footprint.
There was about 6 inches of it, 15 centimeters of it, and there were a lot of people enjoying skiing on it as well.
Yeah, it was just absolutely fantastic.
We didn't have skis then, did we? We couldn't ski.
We did not. I could not ski.
We were
I've
jealous.
never skied, I mean, yeah. If I had tried to ski, it would not have looked like the fantastic telemark turns that we saw on the side of the hill.
No, I don't think it would have looked very good, would it? Another thing to remember better about going on the train in this instance for this trip was that we could go to the pub at the railway station.
Which indeed we did.
We got the train home, which indeed we did, because if we hadn't, we would have frozen to death. Because it was about -15 on the platform when we were waiting for the train. But it wasn't -15 in the hotel bar.
It was not. They were serving beers, wines, whiskies, the nectars of the grape and the grain, of which we enjoyed. As I'm sure everyone has on this fine holiday season, not the 27th of October.
December 2020.
Yes. Hasn't 2020 been a lovely year, and we can all toast to it being a wonderful year.
What a success.
What a success all round. Yeah. Alex, thanks for that. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your snow insights.
Thanks for having me.
It's all right. It's a pleasure. It's a genuine pleasure. So, as ever, I shall close out with the various ads. Do you have anything you want? Wait a minute. I tell you what. Let's go. First of all, thanks to everyone who listens in audio podcast form. Why you do this on a primarily image-driven format, I do not know, but quite a few of you listen, and thanks for doing so. I hope you enjoy it. We are available on all good podcasting platforms. There are so many now that I can't be bothered to say them. Audible's on here as well. It's quite something. So lots of different podcasting platforms. Hooray. You can support me on Patreon to make more of this happen. So, choosing future episodes, suggesting guests, themes, getting sneak peeks, watching the good grief, and also the Discord. Go into the Discord, garethdennis.co.uk/Discord, where I don't know what it is, but it's happening all the time, and it's relentless, and it has escalated rapidly. And goodness knows what it'll be doing when this goes out live, crikey. And then also, you can chuck me money on PayPal if you want to support me as well. But anyway, the support that you give makes these happen, which, for better or worse, is providing me life during this horrible year of lockdowns and disease. So, oh yes, a giant orange screen, because I don't know what the next episode is going to be. Alex, what's the next episode going to be? Neither of us know, but I'm going to put a picture of what the next episode is going to be here. And we're going to I'm sure it'll be very good. It'll be good, Alex, won't it? Yes.
It will be excellent, of course.
Yeah.
And it'll be in 2021.
It will. It will. It'll be the first
Happy New Year
2021
episode.
Happy New Year episode. Yeah, crikey. And that is, I'd want to go to, wait for it, back to side by side so we can say our cheerios. Alex, that's been brilliant. Thanks for that. This was an excellent nonsense holiday episode.
Well, total nonsense. And as you can tell, we could witter on about snow and trains and hill trips for hours, couldn't we? And everyone would get thoroughly bored. But
we've already done an hour.
Lasted this long,
yeah.
Good on them.
Yeah, for people who've managed to get through this, congratulations, and your efforts are appreciated. It only remains for us to really say cheerio, I think.
Yeah.
Cheerio.
Thanks for having me, Gareth.
That's a pleasure,
Bye.
Alex. Bye.
Next time I'll tie my bow tie.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can't have everything, can we? But it's fine. I've got this hat, and you also put some Christmas decorations up behind you.
I did put some Christmas decorations up, yeah.
I'm going to get RSI by waving so much. I'm still waving. Cheerio, everyone. Goodbye.